Now, please don't laugh.
Memo to believe, and what, if anything, does either mean for Robert Mueller's investigation? We're taking a look at that on this edition of Politics. Welcome to Politicking. I'm Larry King. Fallout from the release of that Republican memo on alleged government surveillance abuses. The president claims total vindication. One of his sons says it's sweet revenge. Democrats, however, call it misleading, reckless, and a bouquet to Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee has his own memo. What's in it? And what will either of these dueling memos mean to the so-called Russia investigation? For that, we turn to our friend Richard Painter, professor of law at the University of Minnesota. He was the chief White House ethics lawyer during the administration of George W. Bush. He joins us from Minneapolis. He's vice chair of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. All right, what's your takeaway, Richard, from the Nunes memo?
Well, the issue here concerns the warrants that the FBI gets for surveillance under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And these so-called FISA warrants are difficult to obtain. The FBI needs to go in front of a judge and explain what evidence they've got for purpose of the surveillance before they can get the warrant. And we had issues with this under the Bush administration, and we were concerned about people collaborating with foreign adversaries. And the FBI is still concerned about that, particularly in light of what Russia's been trying to do to interfere in our elections. So they had evidence that a friend of Donald Trump, Carter Page, was associating with Russian agents. It was credible evidence. It was from opposition research, some of the evidence from opposition research done in connection with this so-called dossier, political opposition research. But that's not unusual that the FBI gets information from a range of different sources, including snitches and sources a lot more disreputable than this opposition research firm. And the FBI went and they got their FISA warrant. It appears to me that what's happening is they want to attack the FBI for getting a warrant from a judge. The FBI explained to the judge the relevant facts. There's no complaint from the judge that the judge wasn't told the relevant facts. And this is the process we use in this country for the FBI to be able to conduct surveillance activities. And if Carter Page doesn't want the FBI watching him, well, I've got advice for him. Just don't hang out with Russian agents.
All right.
But if you're going to hang out with Russian agents, they're going to be watching you, and so that's their job.
Well, Donald Trump squeezed out that the Nunes memo totally vindicates him. What do you read into it?
Well, it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with an associate of his who was, there's very credible evidence, was collaborating with Russian agents. Now, if this associate was working for Donald Trump in the course of collaborating with the Russian agents, then it just proves that there was collaboration between his associate, Carter Page, and Russian agents on his behalf. It does the opposite of vindicate him. But at this point, the Nunes memo has absolutely nothing to do on its face with Donald Trump. It has to do with the FBI conducting legitimate surveillance with the permission of a judge and a group of people in Congress who want to attack the FBI for doing its job.
You recently described Congressman Devin Nunes as acting as a stooge for Putin. What leads you to that characterization?
Well, the only person who's interested in keeping the FBI from conducting these surveillance operations inside the United States of people who are collaborating with Russian agents, the only person who is really interested in keeping the FBI from doing that is Vladimir Putin, with the exception, of course, of the Americans who actually are collaborating with the Russians. But if the FBI is going to be attacked by the United States Congress for doing its job and conducting surveillance of people collaborating with Russian agents, that's going to make Vladimir Putin's job that much easier, because his agents are going to be able to come over to this country, collaborate with a whole bunch of people, and the FBI is going to be intimidated, not by Putin, but by our own United States Congress, into not conducting the surveillance we need for purposes of our national security. If we'd done business this way during the Cold War, and Congress had attacked the FBI and the CIA this way during the Cold War, we'd all be speaking Russian by now.
Which members of the Trump team do you think are in the legal jeopardy here?
Well, I don't know about the Trump team at this point. We just have a memo with a lot of nonsense from Congressman Nunes. I don't know that he's violated the law by releasing this memo. It certainly jeopardizes our national security. He certainly should not be chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He should be thrown out of Congress. President Trump never should have cleared the release of this memo and the classified information in it. This only helps Vladimir Putin plan his next attack on the American democratic system, and I'm sure he has his plans for fall 2018.
What about the Democratic memo?
Well, if it has the same classified information in it, it certainly ought to be released. If it has additional classified information in it, then I would not support releasing any additional classified information. I'm not sure the Democratic memo says anything that we don't already know, which is that this Nunes memo is a crock of baloney. It's an unjustified attack against the FBI. This was a FISA warrant obtained from a judge based on credible evidence. The FBI was doing its job, and the Congressman Nunes and the majority in the House, unfortunately, want to attack the FBI instead of supporting the FBI and conducting counterespionage. We really know everything we need to know. I think it'd probably be better for the Democrats to move on and focus on other things.
Are we in some sort of governmental peril here with the president attacking the FBI, with the division in the country? Are you worried about where this is all going?
Well, we do have political divisions in our country, as we always have, but we're Americans first. And when a foreign power seeks to infiltrate our election system, we don't go running to that foreign power for help in beating our adversaries in an American election. That's fundamentally un-American. And unfortunately, a number of people associated with President Trump did just that. They had that Trump Tower meeting back in June of 2016. And they're members of Congress who want to justify this behavior. Well, we're going to have to send them a strong message that America does come first. We are Americans before we're Democrats and Republicans. We're Americans, and we're going to stand up for our own country, our own system of representative democracy, our own intelligence services, and our FBI against these types of unwarranted attacks.
Recently, Monmouth University poll says more than 70% of Americans think that the president should sit down with Robert Mueller. Do you?
Oh, I think he should be very open with Robert Mueller. Sit down with him and talk and answer the questions. And answer the questions truthfully and cut the nonsense. We've had too many lies being disseminated by the White House, the president saying too many things on Twitter that just aren't true. Now it's time to sit down with Robert Mueller and tell him the truth, nothing but the truth. And we need to get to the bottom of this Russia investigation, find out who collaborated with the Russians, who lied about their contacts with the Russians, who's been doing money laundering with the Russians, and then we got to figure out how to protect our country so this never happens again.
Richard, as always, thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Discussion. Let's spend some time with Amy Holmes, political analyst, former staffer to Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist. She is in New York. And Bill Press, progressive commentator, host of the Bill Press Show on the Young Turks Network. Amy, Richard Painter said the FBI gets information from lots of sources. It could come from people involved in the other side. It could come from snitches. If they believe there's some credibility, they go to a judge and get a warrant. What's wrong with that?
Sure, certainly that's what we understand about FBI investigations, but we also know that the FISA court does have a higher standard, a higher bar for trying to get that warrant because it involves spying on American citizens. So rightly, you should go to the FISA court with, probable cause for why you should be spying and convincing that judge. In the case of the warrant to spy on Carter Page, and I would guess that's what you're referring to, a lot of the controversy is that the FBI they themselves said that the dossier, which they relied on in part to be able to get that warrant, had a lot of unconfirmed stuff. James Comey said in congressional testimony that it contained salacious, unverified materials and that it was only minimally corroborated. And from what we know at the moment, the FBI also didn't inform the FISA court that this information in the dossier came from specifically Fusion GPS and a British spy that was hired by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign to dig up dirt on a political opponent. They said it came from a political person, but they didn't specify to the judge exactly who. And it seems like that would be something you'd want to disclose.
Bill, do you think this memo cleared President Trump, as he said?
Nobody believes that but Donald Trump. Maybe Paul Ryan, too. No, Larry, this is the biggest embarrassment, I think, for this administration. It's a colossal nothing burger. I mean, the build-up to this thing, partly directed by the White House, was so intense. Everybody in Washington, they couldn't wait to read this memo because this was going to blow the Mueller investigation apart. And it doesn't do that at all. It doesn't say, and it does say that the FBI did not rely exclusively, Amy just acknowledged that, did not rely exclusively on the Christopher Steele so-called dossier. They had multiple sources. This was a guy, Carter Page, that the FBI had been after since 2013. They got a previous FISA warrant against him because they thought he was a Russian spy. So they didn't need this dossier, and it again was only one of the things that they relied on. The other thing is, Donald Trump said this proves that going to get the warrant on Carter Page is what fueled the FBI investigation. The memo itself points out that the FBI investigation started months earlier with George Papadopoulos. So they were already months into this investigation before the Carter Page thing came up.
Amy.
I think, it's not what Donald Trump says it is at all.
Amy, what was the president basing his statement on?
Well, I think Bill Press summed it up very well there, that the president believes that the memo exonerates him in some way. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think that it shows some funny business, some sneakiness going on by the FBI. And let's not forget, aside from the memo, that there have been people involved in this investigation who've been demoted, who've been taken off the investigation. On the Mueller team, you had Peter Strzok. He was half of that love duo texting furiously back and forth during the campaign, during the Clinton investigation, and also the Russia investigation. He was taken off of this because he was seen to be inappropriate in some way. Bruce Orr, he is a top DOJ official. His wife worked for Fusion GPS. He did not disclose that properly when he was asked about it, that he'd met with Christopher Steele, that his wife worked specifically on the Russia investigation at Fusion GPS at the behest of the Clinton campaign and the DNC. He did not disclose this. And you know what? He's been demoted from both of the jobs that he had at the DOJ. So it seems that some of this funny business is being acknowledged and recognized just by the actions of the DOJ and the FBI themselves.
Amy,
Larry, if I can,
Bill, we'll pick right up with you. Just let me get a quick break and we'll start to come back to Bill Press.
Okay.
Stay right there. We'll have more politicking right after the break.